This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Parshas Toldos. Before we continue on with our regular topic, just a little bit about the Parsha. We have Mamish Dvarim Neflam. Pasuk says, the beginning of the Parsha, Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem L'noichach Eshtai. Yitzchak didn't just daven, he didn't just pray. Vayetar. Vayetar means, Rashi says, Hirba v'hiftzer b'tfilah. He davened increasingly great. He davened very, very strongly. And the pasuk says it's not on your sheet. You're going to have to listen for this one. Ki akarahi. Because she was barren. Vaye'aser loy Hashem. What does it mean, Vaye'aser loy Hashem? Zok Rashi, Vaye'aser loy nispatzer v'nispayes. Nispatzer v'nispayes v'nispateloi. Rashi says three words. What does it mean, Vaye'aser? Vaye'aser means he allowed himself to be impressed. He allowed himself to be convinced. He allowed himself to be seduced, so to speak. In other words, it's a very unusual expression. Very unusual expression. The Torah doesn't say Hashem heard the tefillah of Yitzchak Avinu. The Torah doesn't say Hashem was makabel the tefillah of Yitzchak Avinu. It says Vaye'aser. He allowed himself to be persuaded. Very unusual expression. Doesn't say it anywhere else in the whole Tanakh. Vaye'aser loy Hashem. And I know you're all bothered by the question because you're flipping through Tanakh and but at Divrei Hayamim Beis Perek Lamed Gimel it says by Menashe Vaye'aser loy, but it doesn't say Vaye'aser loy Hashem. It says Vaye'aser loy. And by Menashe it says Vayispalo Menashe Vaye'aser loy. Here it says Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem Vaye'aser loy Hashem. It's a language that implies that almost Hashem had to allow himself to be convinced. He didn't want to do it. He really would rather not do it. But what could he do? Yitzchak was davening. Hashem allowed himself to be entreated. What's this expression? Vaye'aser loy Hashem. It says of Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld. Unbelievable. We know that on the day that Avraham Avinu died, the day of Avraham Avinu's Patira, so Yaakov Avinu was cooking the lentils, and Esav came back from the field, and on that day, Chazal say, Esav did 5 averos. He went off the derech on that day. What day was that? The day that Avram Avinu passed away. Why did Avram Avinu pass away on that day? Chazal say, really, how long did Avram Avinu live? 175. He should have lived 180. Why did he live 5 years less? So that he should not see Esav going off. So in other words, really, Avram should have lived another 5 years. Really, Esav should have been born 5 years later. But because Esav was born 5 years earlier, so Avram Avinu had to die 5 years earlier. So when Yitzchak is davening for children, the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, I'm not ready to give you children yet. Avram Avinu still has another 5 years to live. You're davening. What could I do? I will allow myself to be convinced at the expense of Avram Avinu that now he's going to live 5 years less. That's what it means, Vaye'aser loy Hashem. Hashem allowed himself to be persuaded even though it would mean Avraham living another 5 years less. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld. You ready for this? Vaye'aser loy Hashem. What's the gematria of Vaye'aser loy Hashem? What's the gematria of Vaye'aser loy Hashem? 848.
1686.
848.
686.
What's Vaye'aser loy Hashem? Excuse me, not 848. 648. What's the significance of 648? Chamesh shanim is 648.
What?
Chamesh shanim. Chamesh shanim. In other words, Vaye'aser loy Hashem. God allowed himself to be entreated. How much? Chamesh shanim. 5 years. 5 years. It's a very interesting idea that really Avraham was supposed to live another 5 years. So why didn't he live an extra 5 years? Why didn't he live another, it's 748. 748. Why didn't he live another 5 years? Because Esav was going to go out, Latar Basra, and Hashem took him away before his time. So one second, that's not fear to Avram Avinu, because Yitzchak Avinu davened that he should have children, so now Avram Avinu has to live 5 years less? So what happened to those 5 years? Where did they go? Where did the 5 extra years of Avram Avinu's life, where did they go? Right? He's supposed to live 180. Where did they go? It's an amazing thing. We know that Adam Harishon lived 930 years. How long was he supposed to live? 1,000. So the Zohar says that when Hashem was showing him the future record book of those who were going to be born, he saw there was going to be somebody by the name of David. David was not supposed to live at all, right? Because really David was the Gilgal of Adam. And Hashem told Adam, the day you eat from the tree, that day you're going to die. But what do you mean? Adam lived 930 years. The answer is, that pasuk was fulfilled completely by David. David was supposed to die by Yom, on that very day. But Adam gave David 70 years. Right? We're all familiar with that. But we're probably not familiar with another statement of the Zohar. The Zohar says in Parshas Vayishlach that Avraham Avinu was supposed to live how many years? 180. But he only lived 175. He donated 5 years to David HaMelech. Yitzchak was supposed to live 180. He lived 180. Yaakov was supposed to live as much as Avraham, 175. Instead, he lived
137.
147. So, he donated how many years to David? 28. He was supposed to live 175. He lived 147. He donated 28 years. That's 28 and 5 is 33. Then there was a man by the name of Yosef. Yosef was supposed to live like his father Yaakov, 147. Instead he lived 110. So he donated 37 years. 37 and 33 is 70. 5 years from Abraham, 28 years from Yaakov, 37 years from Yosef, a total of 7. So now you have yourself a good old steer on the Zohar. Because the Zohar says that Adam gave 70 years to David HaMelech. And then the Zohar says, right, 28 years came from Abraham. 5 years came from Abraham. 28 came from Yaakov. 37 came from Yosef. So that's where the 70 years came from. So how do we answer this? The steer in the Zohar.
Day and night he needed double because he was.
So the Chida writes, right? The Chida writes in Midbar Kedemos. Do we have it? I have it left in my car. Chida writes in Midbar Kedemos that David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayim. David HaMelech, he represents Chayim. Chai v'Kayim. Why? Because since Adam brought Misa la'olam, so David wanted to counteract Misa. So that's why everything he does is Chai. For example, David HaMelech doesn't sleep. David HaMelech did not sleep more than Shitin Nishmin at one time. He didn't sleep more than 60 horse breaths at one time. Either that means 3 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 hours. So David HaMelech, if he didn't sleep, that means even though he lived 70 years, he really lived 140 years. Because most people, let's say they lived 100 years. They're only living during the day. During the night, they're basically dead. Right? What's the difference between sleep? You're in both positions, you're horizontal, and you don't hear, right? So what's the difference? So the Chidah says, but David was alive during the day. He was alive at night. So Adam Arishon gave David the daytime life. But the Avos gave David HaMelech the nighttime. So when Chazal say that Abraham was supposed to live 180 and he lived 175, what happened to the missing 5 years? The answer is the missing 5 years went to David HaMelech. Okay. Once we're on the topic of Gematrias, from Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld, I'll throw out to you 5 of my favorite ones from Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld. Mamish, half of a fella. 5 of the most amazing Pillei Plam that I ever heard. I saw it recently. No, not on the sheet. Not on the sheet. He said for this you have to listen. Right? Like this. On Rosh Hashanah, we lane 2 days, right? What do we lane the first day of Rosh Hashanah? Hashem Pakad Asar. What do we lane the second day of Rosh Hashanah? The Akedah. Both from Vayera. A total of how many words? So I don't know if you ever got a chance to count, but I'll tell you. How many words do we lane on Rosh Hashanah? From Hashem Pakad Asar till the end of Vayera, a total of 861 words. Bigamatria, Rosh Hashanah. Bigamatria, Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is 861. Then you ever wonder, how does the Rosh Hashanah laning end? Right? Ufilag shoish maruma vatila gam hi estevach v'yesgachem v'yestachash v'yesmacha. Right? Very anticlimactic laning. Right? We're laning about Hashem gave Sarah a child. Avram Avinu was willing to be Makav Yitzchak on the Mizbeach. And how do we end? What's the crescendo? V'yesmacha. Who's Macha? Ooh, we care about Macha. We ever heard of Macha? I don't know, from a hole in the wall. Who's Macha? Why would the laning of Rosh Hashanah end off with the word Macha? Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld, what's Rosh Hashanah? Malchus. Macha is Rosh Tevis, Melech al Kol Haaretz. Melech al Kol Haaretz. Okay. The next one, when Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld said it over, they said that he had to say this Baruch HaKodesh. Okay? There's a pasuk. It says, Tzion b'mishpat tipada. We've said this over recently. Tzion b'mishpat tipada v'shaveha b'tzedakah. Yeah? Tzion b'mishpat tipada is b'gematria Talmud Yushalmi. V'shaveha b'tzedakah is b'gematria Talmud Bavli.
Wow.
Tzion b'mishpat tipada Talmud Yushalmi. V'shaveha b'tzedakah Talmud Bavli. Okay. Then, everybody knows that Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld had a very strong stance about the Jews who were returning to Eretz Yisrael. There were those who opined that let the Jews return no matter what. They keep the mitzvahs, they don't keep the mitzvahs. Eventually, their neshamos will ignite. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld said, no, that's not how it works. Eretz Yisrael is only interested in Jews who keep the mitzvahs. Those who don't keep the mitzvahs, stay out. Where do we learn this from? Misameach Tzion Bivaneh, right? Tzion rejoices with her children. Bigamatria 613. Meaning, Tzion is only Misameach Bivaneh provided that they keep the 613. Otherwise, Vataki Haaretz Yisrael. Otherwise, the land vomits out those who live in it. Okay, one more. Okay, ready for this? How many times do we daven every day? 3 times a day. Okay, very good. By the way, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnenfeld used to daven Nusach Ashkenaz. His minhag was to daven Nusach Ashkenaz, but he used to like to daven once in a while in a Nusach Sfard shul. Because Nusach Ashkenaz, by Musaf, they say Naritzcha v'Nakdishcha. Nusach Sfard says Keser. He liked to hear them say Keser. Why? So like this. You daven Shemona Esrei 3 times a day. Shemona Esrei has how many brachos? 19. What's 19 times 3? 57. 57. Then you have Chazar Sashatz twice a day. Shachris and Mincha. Another 38. What's 57 and 38? 95. 6 days a week. 95 times 6 is 570. 570, right? 570. Shabbos, how many Shemona Esreis do you have? 4. How many brachas in Shemona Esrei? 7. 4 times 7 is? 28. 598. How many Chazar Sashatzes on Shabbos? 3. Mariv, Shachris. Excuse me. Mariv, let's put aside Mariv for a second. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha. That's 3 times 7. 21. What is 598 and 21? 619. But there's one more bracha. Because the Mariv, you don't have a Chazar Sashat, but you have bracha achas mein sheva. That's 620. So over the course of the week, how many brachos do we say to Hashem? 620 brachos. So when we get to Shabbos, we say like this. Keser is 620. Yitnu lecha Hashem Elokeinu malachim hamoynei mala imamcha Yisrael. We've given you the Keser now, Ribbon Shalom. We've davened our 620, 570 during the week, another 50 on Shabbos. That's Keser. When you get to Shabbos, we say, now Klal Yisrael gives you a Keser together with Malachei Hasharis. That's the Keser. If you ever wanted to know, what's the Keser of the Ribbon Shalom? The 620 Tfilos of Shemana Esrei that we say throughout the week. That's the Pshat in Keser. Yitnu L'cha Hashem L'keinu, Malachim HaMoinei Mala, Imamcha Yisrael Kivutzei Mata. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.